Thank you for tuning in to our last installment, like a special edition of the In Bloom Political Education series that we've been doing on our Instagram throughout the summer, moving into the fall. So for folks who are newer to our page, my name is Brianna Perry, she, her pronouns, and I'm the Executive Director at Healthy and Free Tennessee, a statewide organization working to grow the movement for reproductive justice across race, gender, and class. And this summer and moving into the fall, we've been doing this Instagram political education series to really dive into the topics, the issues that really inform our policy priorities. And we've been able to be in conversation with folks related to conversations around child abuse pediatricians, navigating the public benefits system in Tennessee, doula care, and also housing justice in Tennessee as well. And so I'm so excited about this conversation today, redefining family abolition 101, and we're going to get into what that is. I very much so was, I didn't know how to respond. I think I was like, what in the world when I first came across this concept. And as I've learned more, I'm like, oh, absolutely, we need to be talking about this more. But it can be kind of off-putting at first. It's like, what do you mean abolish a family? What does that look like? And so happy to be in conversation with two folks today, Alana Armstead and Maureen Hart at Kuluntu Reproductive Justice Center, who worked on a powerful literature review, and we're going to share those resources and zine that goes into family abolition after this conversation and get into what it is. So yeah, I want to just first start with one, thank you all so much for being on this live with me, being in conversation with me to really share more with our supporters about family abolition. But I first wanted to open it up and invite you all to tell us more about yourselves and the work at Kuluntu Reproductive Justice Center.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction. I'll start. Hi again, like you said, my name is Alana. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm from Dallas, Texas, but I live in Harlem now. And I work in a few places, but I've been working with Kuluntu Reproductive Justice Center for more than a year now, and have an academic background in social health, gender and reproduction, and maternal and child health. So I'm gonna let Marin introduce themselves, but a bit about the literature review and redefining family. We explored the history of the nuclear family in the United States and, saw th threads of family destruction, family separation, which I think we'll talk a bit about tonight, and exploitation. But stumbled upon family abolition, kind of had similar reactions to you. I was like, what the hell is that? But kept talking about it and felt like it was very, very necessary. Marin.
Yeah, that's a great intro to our project. I'm Marin. I am also from Texas. I'm from Houston, but I'm in Portland, Oregon these days. Um, my pronouns are they, them. Yeah, I've been working with Kuluntu about as long as Alana has. Um, and Kuluntu Reproductive Justice Center was founded by the lovely Kai Blue in 2019 in Atlanta. Um, and Kai is a doula and a childbirth educator, and also does consulting work, work with other organizations who are working to kind of decolonize these constructs of gender and um, family and stuff. Um, but recently, in the last year and a half or so, the work of Kuluntu has kind of shifted to be about this research and political education kind of work. So that's where our project started, with the lit review, and then yeah, we've just kept working from there. We'll talk more, I'm sure, about our anthology project, which is like the next phase of our research. But that's where we started.
Yeah, thank you all so much for that. And just sharing more about the work of Kuluntu and just like the background, and definitely encourage folks to check out y'all's work and follow the pages, and we'll be dropping that in the chat as well. So I want to first start with inviting y'all to share more about the approach at Kuluntu around like rebuilding families, building families and kinship in a different way. So with this concept, redefining family, could you just say more what y'all mean about that? Like kind of what that looks like. Now just
Yeah,
open
I can
it.
talk
Okay,
a
go
little
ahead.
about it, and then please jump
Yeah.
in, Alana. Um, yeah, I think really the like core idea behind redefining family is that we should all be free to form the relationships that we want with each other without the pressures and constraints of um, our legal system, of capitalism, of all of these structures that we live under. Um, and that working towards creating more authentic relationships and care webs that are not bound up in legal and biological kinship is part of what is going to help us get free, and just survive the circumstances that we're currently in.
Yeah, I would say redefining family to me is about like what you're saying, Marin, to remove the walls the word family creates in our lives and our concept of who we care for and who is supposed to care for us, and kind of break down those legal bioessentialist definitions of family, and kind of recognizing that everyone deserves that care, regardless of who they're related to and what circumstances they might find themselves in, and really reckoning with the different realities people may experience if they are not lucky enough to come from
Mhm.
a positive family of origin environment, or a supportive or a resource that limit the scope of how people are able to live and thrive.
Yeah. Thank y'all so much for that. I really appreciate this uplifting of kind of like this strong tethering to like a group of people that we don't like get to choose. And some people that is a very positive experience, and others it's not. And kind of like on when I'm just thinking about how what's happening in communities for a long time, it's like, okay, yeah, there's like this like legal like thing, like stamp of approval on your relationship, or how you're gathering your kinship network, then it's not legitimate, and how the state comes in and decides that. And when people like don't have that stamp of approval and it's not legitimized, then they are barred from resources and all of these things, and just from like deep care and love. And when it comes to like, being like born into a family that is unable to provide like, care and love and support, there is something that's like going on there, then it's just kind of like, oh, well, this is just kind of the case. And, you might have like other uh, supportive people in your life, but when it comes down to it, like legally, this is who, gets to have this say so. When I was like went to this conference, learned about this, like, oh, what the hell? And it was like, oh, like something clicked for me. And I was like, well, actually, this does happen. And so that leads me into this next question around like, what would y'all say is family abolition? And if you could just share more about the history behind the framework, some of the things y'all like kind of came across, lifted up in the literature review, because our supporters are definitely familiar with like abolition language, but family abolition is probably new. So yeah, just hoping you can like share more. What is that, and some of the history behind this movement and framing.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite definition of family abolition comes from a scholar, Alva Gottby. So I'll just read her definition, which is um, family abolition is the movement to undo the family by creating a world where the family is no longer necessary as a site of care and resource distribution. Um, and I like that definition because it focuses on what family abolition seeks to create,
Mm,
which is, I think, the connection between family abolition and the movements to abolish prisons and the police, um, which is that both of them are not just seeking to like deconstruct something or like take something away, but both want to create something positive. And in the case of prison abolition, it's the how do we create safety in our communities? How do we decide what that means together? How do we deal with harm in a constructive way? Like those are the things abolition in general wants to create. And so it's the same with family abolition. Like it's not about taking away people's close and loving relationships. That's all we want to preserve in this world.
mm, mhm,
Um, but um, how can we create a world in which people are not reliant on their family's resources to survive? Like we should all just have everything we need um, without our relationships like being reliant on outside resources to nourish us. Um, and that's what I think is really a like misnomer about family abolition is that it's not actually about our family relationships, it's about capitalism. Um,
mhm,
and the issue is that we can get what we need by working for wages or by being in relationship with someone who works for wages. So, you have parents who work until you can work for yourself and earn your own money, or you have a spouse who works and provides for you. But that's the only way that we survive in the society, right? Is we have access to resources, to money. Um,
mhm,
and that in itself is inhumane. It's not right. And family abolition sees the way that capitalism puts all these pressures on our relationships and asks, like, what would our relationships look like without those pressures? Um, that's really what like family abolition is getting after.
mhm,
Yeah, thank you. I really love the no longer necessary part about that definition. It's saying my internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me?
yeah, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Mhm,
Well, yeah, I really appreciate the no longer necessary part of that definition because it really highlights that the way that family has been weaponized for some people's reality as the only thing you can be reliant on. And if you don't have it, then you're SOL in a lot of situations, and how that kind of trickles down to the most marginalized people in our society.
mhm,
And how, like, if your family kicks you out because you're queer, there's nothing nobody can do for you because the people who could do something for you don't want to. And I think family can be a very, very beautiful word for a lot of people. And I think it is a beautiful word. And I call my friends my family and things like that. But I think something we kind of really discovered in the literature review is how family has been used as a site of extraction and surveillance, and like the
mhm,
way specifically legal services and social services rely on very, very specific definitions of family to kind of encode obligation in a way that is not like, it's not encompassing all people. And that's what we're against. That's what we want to abolish. But we want, and the definition of family abolition that came up for me is from where family abolition is a commitment to making freely available all the necessary resources for everyone to thrive, to live and survive.
mhm. Yeah. Thank y'all for that, Alana and Moran. Because like I said, very much so was like, no, families. And I really appreciate Marin, to what you said about like, oh, actually, what we're getting at here is like capitalism and how capitalism structures our lives and our relationships and sets up this dynamic, like, people who are working and like the extraction. And then, later on, when young people didn't grow up and be able to like participate in that system and how that continues. And I also really appreciate this definition, like second definition as well, Alana, around like the resources being freely available in society, like care being freely available, that we all deserve it. Like it shouldn't be attached to like a job, or it shouldn't be attached to, something else, that like we should be able to like get those resources to, live in, thrive in communities, to be tapped into our self-determination, which is so core, to reproductive justice. So that's something that really stands out to me. And so y'all already have gotten into like this next question um around like who is defining what a family is and how the state does that. And so that's where I really want to go to next. And what ways does the state define what a family is, who gets to be a family, and how do y'all see that playing out in today's political climate? I like, saw a post that Prism put out, like maybe this was last week, but been just kind of getting into the weeds of the trad wife phenomenon, and kind of like this push for family values and that being like a big thing. And so that's something that comes to mind, but just really want to ask y'all, like, how is the state defining what a family is, who gets to be a family, and what is that looking like today in today's political climate?
Yeah, the the state first and foremost controls and regulates family by um, controlling and emphasizing marriage as a legal tie and deciding who can and can't get married. Um, but also we think about like uh, parental custody laws, how much queer couples have to struggle to do second parent adoptions just to have legal right to their children, which is usually a very expensive and time process.
Mm,
Um, so that's one example that just comes straight to mind. Um, but there's like a million other ways in all of our institutions, both legal and social, that the family is reaffirmed
mm,
in insurance policies, and how you can only have a legal spouse be covered by your insurance, um, in who gets to make decisions about your health, who gets to
mm,
make decisions about your assets after you die. Like all of these things are controlled by biological and legal families in our current system. Um, so yeah, and then it falls down to like hospital visitation rules and who can pick up your kid from school, and like not even legal, but just the ways
hmm
that socially we um, enforce this idea about what a family should look like, which it probably goes without saying is usually the like heterosexual married
mm,
family.
mhm.
So
Yeah, I would second everything you brought up so far. So many ways in law and policy, especially marriage and topics of custody and guardianship, how like we're able to, how the government is able to kind of distribute or disperse child welfare, things like that. I remember being so baffled when I was first reading about the application process for WIC and who gets to be your child and for how long, basically, and just access to resources, tax benefits, like you said, health care decision. Like, I think I'm young enough to have taken for granted that like gay marriage has been legal for some time and will remain so. But it
we hope
is,
so.
I know, right? Like all these things.
um,
Woo.
but it creates very real pathways to access for people who their family is, or like being part of a family and having that structure. And yeah, yeah, I would second everything you said, Marin.
Yeah. And in terms of how we're seeing that crop up more today, we write a little bit in the literature review about just the language around family in Project 2025, the like document that they wrote, um, which I won't spend much time talking about because like whatever. But there's just like so much language about like traditional family values. It's like straight out of the 1980s. You know, marriage and husband and wife and biological kids and all this stuff
Mm.
that's being praised and uplifted by conservative politicians and has been for decades. I'm like, can we have a new story, please? It's just tired.
Mhm.
But I think it's also important to look at like why conservative um, regimes uplift the family so much. Like, why do they care? Um, and they care because the family is the privatized care system. Like, the family is how we are caring for each other without the social safety net that we deserve, and which they're
Mm.
actively slashing right now, like getting rid of so much of Medicare and Medicaid in the last few months. Um, that's just like one example of how they're stripping back our already incredibly meager social service net.
Mm.
Um, and they do that because, they can spend less money on public good, on public care services.
Mm.
And more of that effort, that energy and money goes to it falls on families and private care to figure out how to like fill those gaps. How are we gonna get by paying our medical bills and getting each other what we? It's very convenient for conservative politicians who want to spend less money on public good like that to say you need to have strong families because that's how things are done.
Mm. Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's such an important question about why conservatives are so interested in reinforcing the family. And it reminds me that the family is the site of social reproduction. The
Yeah.
family reproduces the status quo. And once you're controlling that model of patriarchy in the home, you're controlling that model of patriarchy in the workplace and society and everywhere else, all the way up. Um, and so I think that, I mean, I'm interested in both this run towards family values and like the social way, and also this huge institutional force that we're seeing with Project 2025. And I wonder if it's an anxious response by by the masses to feel like, oh, this is how I get protected. Let me make sure I'm
Mm.
able to get married. Let me become more of the person, the straight white woman who will get married more than like who actually would want to be. But also just how um they need us to conform, because if we're not conforming, we're doing something against what they have planned with capitalism, which is
Mm.
for us to kind of submit to power at every single level.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank y'all for that. It's reminding me of just sometimes like conversations that come up in the policy realm where it's like, let's widen what's considered X, Y, and Z versus like, okay, let's hold material relief. With like what is at the root and going back to like these definitions related to family abolition, like care freely being available, like that's the vision, and like that's what like we need to be making sure that resources are available for anyone versus like fitting into whatever context of such as like what's considered the nuclear family, and not like like, oh, let's try to do this and that with this definition versus like challenging it. Like fundamentally, this is an issue, has tied to capitalism, and how is the work to ensure that resources, care is freely available to everyone. So I really appreciate that, and it's got me thinking. And so with some of the work, or a big piece of the work at Healthy and Free, we're um, like working at the intersections of reproductive justice and abolition, and have really prioritized over the past few years pushing back on the family policing system and working to make sure families remain together. And this is something that came up when I was at the conference. Someone was, I think, the workshop panel that I went to, panel discussion, somebody was doing family policing work, and I thought it was like interesting and like think about this. It's like, fighting for families to remain together and holding up like this larger vision. And, those things, aren't necessarily like in deep, deep tension. Like, it's true, like Black families, and their relationship to the family policing system, and, brown families, indigenous families, boarding school, like all of that history is still, important to keep in mind. And we do want to be mindful of like what y'all spoke to, like the ways that the state is seeking to control the family, and the ways that capitalism, as it shape shifts, continues to like set up this like rigidity around like kinship. And so I'm curious, like for us at Healthy and Free, and maybe other folks who are working at these intersections, to what extent does fighting against the family policing system connect to family abolition work? And also, what would y'all say are things we should keep in mind so we aren't reinforcing traditional and rigid ideas of family? And Alana or Marin, either
I
one of
can I can start
you.
freestyling a bit.
Okay.
The first thing I would say is that families that want to be together deserve to be together. And I think that, I mean, I'm really reminded of this book I read for my thesis, which was after we wrote the literature review. It's called Poverty of Privacy Rights by Khiara and Bridges. And she's a legal scholar. And the first section of her book really walks through a lot of the social services like WIC and TANF and things like that, and how it is such a function of surveillance to be able to villainize a Black single mother and then take her kids from her because she's an irresponsible parent. And
Mm,
so I think that is a version of family policing that leads to family separation. And like it's pretty sinister because she is under-resourced, she cannot have access to her family and things like that. And when we think about family abolition, it's about resourcing people
mm,
so it kind of works together. It feels a little antithetical, um but it's like the way that surveillance in the family is policed in the system is to create mechanisms of punishment, feels like for Black women, for under-resourced people to, and it feels hard for me to say this because I'm like, why? But it's what they're
mm,
doing. And I think the thing that I would want to say to keep in mind as like the mission is to keep families together and things like that is to like really internalize that children are the most oppressed class in this country.
mm,
Um, and they are autonomous human beings. And I think we really spend a lot of time deconstructing this idea of ownership and kind of entitlement to a child, which is hard because they're dependents and things like that. And we've also encountered a lot of anxiety from really caring parents at our workshops who are like, I'm so afraid that my child won't need me.
mm,
If they don't need me, like they don't need me to feed them or something like that, which is um, really understandable and the best of intentions. And I think that when I think about that, it's it kind of boils down to the environment that the family exists in. That like if someone is not like physically, if I don't live here, I starve, dependent on you, what they want to be there, and creating that environment is really, really important. But I think that all circles back to families that want to be together, including like um, teenagers, queer teenagers, ostracized teenagers, deserve to stay together, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does. Yeah. Yeah, I'll pass it to Marin. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would totally second all of what Alana just said. Pretty much covered everything that I thought about this question too. But I'll say some stuff in maybe a different way, which is, yeah, absolutely like families that want to stay together should, and family abolition um, has no part to play in that. Like that's not antithetical to family abolition at all. Because I think the root of family abolition is about um, like freedom and choice in our relationships, and centering, yeah, most what we want, rather than like what we feel forced into or what we feel stuck in, which is how so many relationships work in this current um, system of reliance. Um, so yeah, totally. Um, and also, I would say something similar about um, like poverty is the biggest factor in terms of like family separation, um,
Mm-hmm.
and um, that that poverty is artificial. That's um, manufactured. Like we have everything we need. We have all of the resources that we need, and it is the structure of our systems that keep us impoverished and keep us in need. It doesn't have to be like that, and I think that is something that is most powerful about the idea of family abolition to me is that it's a constant reminder that we do not have to be living this way.
Mm-hmm.
It is our politicians and our systems that keep it this way, and we all deserve to have our needs met, and we can accomplish that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, anytime a system chooses to separate a child from their family, it could be choosing to resource that family in order to care for their kid rather than take them away. And that's the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so family abolition is exactly in alignment with uh, changing these systems to not create that artificial poverty, um, so that everyone can have what they need and everyone can be in a relationship in the way that they wish to. And hopefully, most of that came through. I didn't cut out too
No,
much,
no, yeah, we heard it. Yeah, it broke up a
but
little bit, but yeah. 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 Thank you both so much for that. We launched a new campaign this year, to your point, Marin, about like, poverty being like at the kind of like root of like what leads to family separation. And so we launched this Poverty's Not the Neglect campaign that our Youth Leadership Council developed, spearheaded, and the focus is really like making clear that poverty is not child neglect, because conditions related to poverty, as y'all are getting at, puts people in situations where they are now facing a DCS investigation and having to go through that system. So absolutely about like resources, and that's something that we think a lot about with like this campaign and like us fighting against the family policing system. And also appreciate what y'all are saying about like, yeah, no, these things aren't like um intention. Like if we're focused on resources and like families who are want to be together, like how are they resourced? And I really appreciate that as well, because I think sometimes, like, again, I think sometimes the language is like, okay, family abolition, family keep families together, what? But there are like nuances and expansiveness around this. And so I appreciate that as well. And it's like helpful for me, in future conversations, like, oh, this is, yes, we're thinking about these things together. They can go together. I think throughout y'all have like been getting to this larger vision and Marin, what you just said about like, it doesn't have to be this way. And Alana, you talking about like, hey, this is what things could be like. And so just want to invite y'all to share more about like what is your vision for collective care in a society where care is centered? What does that look like to y'all?
For Alana.
Yeah, yeah. I'll try. You're trying
Or
like
not.
no, I can definitely try. It's uh, I mean, I love the invitation to like imagine expansively, and so it's a little bit overwhelming. Uh, um, but I think just a world without transactions,
Mm,
um, where we can trust each other and provide care reliably and just like kind of lose this scarcity mindset that is so forced on us about every aspect of the way that we live and interact with each other. There is enough food, there is enough space for everyone to be housed. There is enough time in the day to talk with people you care about and
mm,
do the things you love. And like enough trust in the world between humans that we want the system to function without being threatened that will be broken then die if we don't do it. Because we want to live in a beautiful world. Um, so just, everyone has their basic human needs met.
mm.
Healthcare is free. Insurance is not a thing. Um,
Mhm.
does money even have to exist? That's my that's my vision, just more time for beautiful things and time together and just I mean really getting back to the human nature of it all because we didn't really sign up to negotiate with capitalism for our entire life.
Mm, mm. Thank
Yeah.
you. Mhm.
Yeah, I think my vision is much the same. Um, and it definitely has been informed by reading sci-fi that like imagines other futures. So I would highly recommend that. And one of my favorite books, um, kind of on this topic, is called Everything for Everyone, by Emmy O'Brien, who is a kind of main family abolition scholar,
Mm,
and Eman Abdelhadi, another academic.
mm,
Um, and they catalog these interviews with people from a post-capitalist future,
mm,
about what their lives are like and how they got there. And it's a really beautiful book, and it imagines people living uh, in like these big communities that have um, kind of a community center at the heart, where people meet to make decisions together, to cook and eat together, um, kind of, yeah, these very community based and led centers. And that's totally in alignment with my vision too, that
mm,
everyone gets to do what they love, what they feel called to do, um, and gets to decide how they want to contribute to their community. Um, and you don't have to cook if you don't want to. You don't have to clean if you don't want to, because there are people who are going to want to, and everyone pitches in and works together. Um, and mostly they hang out, like they hang out with each other a lot. Um, I think that's what we're here to do. Um, so yeah, I would recommend reading that book and others that help you expand your imagination of what um, a care-centered world could look like, because it could be that
mhm.
simple.
Yeah. Oh, thank y'all both for that. And we'll make sure the name of that book, I think Nina probably dropped it in the chat, but Marin, just in case, can you repeat the name and the author just one more time?
Yeah, the book I mentioned is Everything for Everyone by Emmy O'Brien and Eman Abdelhadi. Beautiful blue cover. You'll see it.
Yeah. Thank y'all both for that vision. And I hear you, Alana, on like that. It's a big question, but being that imaginative space, and also like, as we were talking about abolition, like, oh, like this is what this vision could look like. We can imagine, like, because sometimes, especially in this moment, like, can we see a different future? Can we like see beyond? And being in that space of like, yes, like we there are more possibilities, even sometimes when it doesn't feel like it or seem like it for some folks. So appreciate y'all offering your thoughts. And also for this conversation. I am learned so much, and I know folks who are tuning in and the folks who will watch the recording afterwards are gonna just be able to like just soak up so much as well. So I really, really appreciate all of the gems that y'all have offered. So we have one last question, and in the spirit of like sharing resources, we've talked about the literature review already, and then this book recommendation. But yeah, I just want to ask this last question around what resources would you all recommend folks check out who are new to this topic?
Yeah, I would definitely second Marin's mention of Everything for Everyone by Emmy O'Brien and Iman Abdelhadi. Also Abolish the Family by Sophie Lewis. I think that's a shorter, maybe more accessible text. Also what I mentioned earlier, The Poverty of Privacy Rights by Khiara Bridges as well. Yeah, yeah. I'll stop there. But those are all really, really important texts that kind of do a good job at illustrating what the family has been and how it's been weaponized in the American history.
Yeah. Marin, did you want to share any other resources that people should check out who are new to this topic?
Those are all that first came to mind also. I haven't read Poverty of Privacy Rights. It's exciting to go on my list. But yeah, the Sophie Lewis Abolish the Family is a great starting place for folks who are interested too. Um, yeah, I mean, the only other thing I would mention is that we are creating a resource ourselves that hopefully will be accessible
Mhm.
to you soon,
Yeah.
which is our Redefining Family anthology. Uh,
Hmm.
After the literature review came out, we got feedback from some folks that were like, okay, that's all great, like, cool. Great to know about family abolition, but like, how do we do that? Or like,
Hmm.
what would it look like to put some of that into practice um, in our daily lives? And obviously, like, family abolition is this kind of utopic theory of a post-capitalist future that can be a guiding vision, um, but there are some like concrete things we can do to be more connected to each other, to take care of each other outside of the family, to build community with our neighbors, with strangers, so we can like start to make those wider care webs before we get to that like you know big future picture.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the goal of the anthology is to gather stories from people who are um, practicing care in a more expansive way, whether in their kind of home lives, like people who are living in intentional communities or co-op
Mm.
situations, people who have a strong chosen family web that they want to talk about, people who are practicing mutual aid, um,
Mm.
those kind of those projects. we're interested in. So we are still collecting people's writing and art on the theme of, expansive family and care. Um,
Mm,
if you're interested, you can check out our Instagram with more. Um, and we're also interviewing folks to hear about their
mm,
stories if people
mm-hmm,
don't want to be um, making art or writing. So yeah, just reach out to us and we would love to chat with you.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like so beautiful. I know Kai mentioned that and I like saw the Instagram post about it, but so exciting to hear that y'all are still collecting stories, artwork around redefining family and the care webs that people are practicing in real time. And then also there's this option for an interview, and we'll make sure that our supporters know about this because there are many examples of that happening. And it also reminds me of our transformative justice work. And I really appreciate it. And really want to point folks to in the zine, like these questions related to care webs. And, I'm thinking about like with, our transformative justice work and Mia Mingus pod mapping. And though, I think those go together
Mm-hmm.
so well. And, in
Totally.
transformative justice, it's the focus is like, oh, like, how are we building deep connections? Who are we leaning on? We have a teaching related to pregnancy criminalization, and one thing that we uplift, like, hey, well, if you were in crisis, who you turn to? And different people come up, right? Not even necessarily people's like bio family. And so I really appreciate what y'all are doing to like capture what folks are practicing in real time. And yeah, just like this invitation to build deeper connections with, your neighbors, people, you're in community with, because that's so needed and just a part of like how we are like expressing and showing care to each other. So I really appreciate that. Well, thank you both so much, Alana and Marin, for this really thoughtful and enriching conversation and introduction to family abolition. Like I said, we'll make sure like the resources are shared with our supporters, and yeah, we're just looking forward to continuing to like be connected. Really appreciate what y'all are doing at Kuluntu Reproductive Justice Center, and yeah, just thank y'all again for being in conversation with me and just sharing like your work and just like your brilliance around this. So really appreciate it.
Thank you
Thank you so
so
much.
much. Everything you're doing with Healthy and Free Tennessee is amazing. So I'm really glad that we've been able to connect and talk.
Yeah, me too. This political education space, I think, is so important and really valuable. So thanks for wanting to chat with us and share with folks and all of the work you're doing in general. It's really awesome.